Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today. Welcome back from summer vacation. I hope most of you, or even all of you, had chance to get some rest and to corroborate and be back with a lot of new energy for the new year. Today, we will have our last webinar for our course. And this is the last webinar, but it's not the last event. In fact, as most of you already know, from the email you received, we will have another event on the 30th of September. And in that occasion, the event will be a blended one, and the in-presence people will be you. So let me repeat again the invitation to be with us on the 30th of September, also because in that occasion we will deliver the certificates and we will celebrate the end of this first edition of our initiative. Now, going to today's talk, today we will have Imola Informatica, and in particular, we will have a talk about cloud-native solutions for enterprise architectures. Imola Informatica is a consultant company. You already know them also through some lectures during the course. And today, we will have a specific focus on the journey that companies have to go through when they want to basically leverage the power of the cloud. So we do have with us two of Imola Informatica consultants, in particular Filippo Bosi and Stefano Monti. It's a great pleasure for me to have them at our roundtable here, at our webinar, also because they had a lot of collaborations with us and they're also friends. So let me now pass the torch to Filippo for first introduction of himself, and then we will go through the abstract, a few words about our speakers, and we will start.
Okay, so let's go straight to the abstract of the presentation, and then we will introduce ourselves together. Today we will talk about going to the cloud, so we will highlight you the things that an enterprise has to take into consideration in order to go effectively to cloud. Cloud is about business of speed. So cloud is about being fast in going into production. And cloud adoption is a journey that forces you to focus on end-to-end speed. So going from development to production in a very fast way. And it's key to go in a very efficient way. So you need to have organizational changes toward value streams for your enterprise. So we will show you how a cloud-native platform should ease you this task by establishing architectural guardrails in order to give you a safety net to let you go as fast as possible in a safe way. We will show you as well how your organization should evolve and follow along and dedicate a specialized platform team in order to adapt the guardrails to your evolving business and to your organization and technical needs. Okay, so I'm Filippo Bosi. I'm senior advisor for Imola Informatica. You can contact me by email, Twitter, or LinkedIn. We have shown you our addresses. And
good afternoon. I'm Stefano Monti from Imola Informatica as well, and I'm a senior consultant of Imola Informatica, and I've been involved in the last years in projects involved in cloud journeys for many large financial institutions and companies. Again, you can contact me by email, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on.
Before moving on, just last remark. we want to make also this webinar as much interactive as possible. So you do have the possibility in this webinar to interact with us through the chat. So basically, you will see I will scroll here and there my smartphone. I'm not going in the social media. I'm basically just checking for your questions. And so please do drop your questions in the chat, in the public chat. And so I will act as a proxy of you all toward our speakers.
Okay, I think we can go to straight to the agenda of today's presentation. First of all, we will introduce cloud definition and cloud features and characteristics. Then we will go to how to craft your enterprise cloud journey. Then we will deep dive into how a cloud native platform can help you and ease your enterprise cloud journey. And then we will finish by discussing how your organization should support this platform in order to support your enterprise cloud journey. So cloud definition, I will be very, very quick on this. In case you've been living under a rock in the last 20 years, cloud is a way to provide ubiquitous, convenient, and on-demand resources via the network in a rapidly and self-provisioned way for customers. Cloud should have some essential characteristics, which is, again, on-demand self-service. Customers should be able to access resources on demand and in a self-service fashion. You have to be able to reach those features, those computing resources via broad network access and with guaranteed high uptime. You should have resource pooling, so your resources should be pooled with resources that others may use and scale accordingly. You should have rapid elasticity. Not only you should be able as a customer to grow and expand the resources you use, but you also should be able to compress them in case you don't need them anymore. And you should do this in a measured and controlled way in order for you to at each and every moment be able to measure how you're spending, how you're using your resources, and so on and so forth. Cloud has different service models. The most basic one is an infrastructure as a service model where you somehow get your resources and spin up a bunch of resources, and then you use them. And then on top of those physical or virtual resources, you build your applications. And then we have a more elaborate model, which is the platform as a service model, where you build your applications on top of a series of facilities, languages, and facilitations the cloud provider provides you. And then you have software as a service, where applications are run for you by your cloud provider. Let's say, for instance, Salesforce or Office 365, and so on and so forth. So basically, the cloud is in charge of running the applications for you instead of you, and you're not allowed to intervene in those applications. There are many different deployment models for cloud. So you can have private cloud, where the infrastructure and the management layer are used by a single organization, and they are managed and operated by the organization itself. Then you can have a community cloud, which is sort of a private cloud, but where there is a community of consumers that exclusively use those resources and that manage and operate those management layers. Then you have public cloud, where the resources are available to the general public, but are managed by external businesses, academic or government organizations. And then you have the hybrid cloud, which is 2 or more distinct cloud as well as on-premise infrastructures that need to cooperate to realize business services and applications. And as we will see later on, hybrid cloud is a fairly important model nowadays. We will see this later on. In the second stage of our presentation, we will talk about enterprise cloud journey. So how to move to the cloud, in a way. The first question many organizations miss to ask when they begin their cloud journey is, why should I go to the cloud? There are many good different reasons for going to the cloud. Cost reduction is what many cloud service providers try to sell you as a value, as the first value we can reach. Speed, scalability, performance, end-to-end speed, as Filippo said before, is one of the other benefits that are really, really compelling nowadays. Increased velocity, increased security, because somehow the cloud service provider manages a lot of security stuff for you sometimes, and increased insight and transparency. What is really important here, and we will try to discuss this a little bit in the next slides, is that each and every benefit you can grasp to the cloud require effort from your organization, from both an organizational standpoint and from a technical and architectural ones. So you need, it's not a magic wand you can agitate in the air to grasp the benefits. You have to work to get those benefits. Then in your enterprise cloud journey, the first question many has to ask, where do I run my workload? Basically, the first question you come across is this one: where should I run my workloads? Why? Well, because many organizations, many large organizations, we work mainly for financial institutions, but it's the same for many other companies, do not play a green field. Yeah, so they have a large application portfolio. They are still running on premises, and going straight to the cloud with their application portfolio is simply not an option. So nowadays, hybrid cloud is really mandatory. You simply cannot begin an enterprise cloud journey thinking of moving to the cloud in a few weeks, moving all your application portfolio to the cloud in a few weeks. So hybrid cloud is really not an option anymore. Is really the only option you have. You need to take into account having a few services on the cloud, but also you probably need to have a lot of services, a lot of data on premises, maybe for technical reasons, maybe for architectural reasons, maybe also for regulatory purposes, because you have a lot of your data on mainframe and you don't want to move them because it's hard and it's difficult, but also because you have to have where you can respect a lot of regulatory purposes. So you have to add those on-prem, okay? Because the law needs you to do that. There are lots of different hybrid cloud adoption models depending on the kind of application you use, on the kind of purposes you're going to the cloud, and we will try to challenge in a few moments one of the main assumptions of going to the cloud and how to go to the cloud. This slide somehow depicts many options. There can be those options should be mixed in terms of the benefits you want to grasp for each and every application. Let's start with a very quick case study. Many companies begin their cloud transition thinking that they need the cloud to scale more rapidly and at a fraction of the cost. This is something that is a big selling point for many cloud service providers. So many cloud services providers come to your organization, say, I can take the pain off of you in scaling more rapidly and in a controlled fashion cost-wise, so you can control your costs. And maybe those costs are cheaper than the one you're sustaining right now. But it's not always true, but okay, we will see this. So basically, we are trying to do, I still have my application on-prem, which is running fine on my data center, and I want to scale bursts of traffic on cloud. Maybe it's a click day for an e-commerce website. Maybe it's the Black Friday on a typical e-commerce website. Okay. So it's fairly easy to understand, and it's a fairly sensible and reasonable goal one organization could have. Okay.
That looks too easy.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds way too easy. This picture, which is a oversimplified and overly optimistic way of adopting this model, will tell you that it's not that easy at all. Even if we have the opportunity to have an application that is already cloud ready, and we will see in a minute what this means, and even if this application is already planned and designed to scale horizontally in an indefinite way, and even if this application works in a containerized fashion, which enables scaling horizontally, you simply cannot attach a stretched cluster to your on-prem cluster because latency is critical. This model shouldn't work. So basically, what the optimal would be to have two different clusters, so two different set of resources, each of them managed by their own, where you can run your applications, the green boxes, and scale the same application, the yellow boxes, just in case traffic begins to rise. Okay. Yeah, but if those control planes, so the logic that pilots the scaling is separate between my on-prem environment and the cloud environment, how do I understand whether I need to scale or not? And most importantly, how do I tell my customers, or how do I not tell the customers that they should go to the yellow instances rather than the green instances? My customers shouldn't be involved in this decision. I need to take care of that on their behalf. So in this simple scenario, I need to use traffic routing from the external that should be taken into account that my application should scale in the cloud. And I should orchestrate both control planes, so both management layers, in order for my application to understand when and how to scale to the cloud and how to reduce cloud computing resources when the burst exhausts. Okay, so and those applications, those yellow boxes, so the yellow boxes I spin on the cloud, will always be in the necessity to interact with my core data and services on-prem. So you need to, the key takeaway point here is that in real-world scenarios, even fairly simple use cases will trick you into thinking of different architectural challenges that require you to intervene in your, not only in your application, but in the whole ecosystem that manages your application. And again, we saw user traffic routing and custom orchestrator, which are easily understandable maybe, but again, there are other technical and architectural hurdles that are not that evident, but they are here. So for instance, network connectivity between your cloud application and your core and data services will become a single point of failure, and their availability becomes even more relevant. So again, the use case is simple, the realization of this use case is not, and entails thinking and designing your applications in a way that encompasses those hurdles and overcomes them. Okay.
And there are even other gems hidden in this design. Just think about geographic latency. Do you remember, Stefano, one customer of ours had a system that was architected like this, and it suddenly started misbehaving in a funny ways, because the queries to the database were going to go fast sometimes and very slow in other times, and the query were always the same, and it was just a matter of slight changes in latency during peak hours, and it was really a mess to understand what was happening. So even a very simple use case can become a nightmare if you go to the cloud. And so you have to take into account, for instance, about measuring latency and seeing when it's jittering, then you have to close your cloud instance, for instance, because opening it makes you scale worse than closing it. So it's counterintuitive, but it happens. So very funny and a nightmare for troubleshooting. Okay.
Okay, so the key takeaway of this simple and oversimplified case study is you need to govern the complexity that comes even in very simple use cases. Then, speaking about your enterprise cloud journey, you have to understand how to design and realize your applications. As I said before, designing applications and building applications for the cloud is crucial. You have to take into account several decisions in the designing and architecting of the overall application. You basically have two opposite approaches. A traditional lift and shift, which basically entails doing the minimum for an existing application in order for it to run in the cloud, be it a monolith, be it a third-party vendor-dependent application. You simply do the minimum required to bring it to the cloud and intervene in the least possible way in your application architecture. On the other end, you have to redesign or re-architect your application in a cloud-native fashion. As we will see, those alternatives are quite the opposite, and there are the extremes of a spectrum, and you will always be in a position where you need to mix and match those approaches. Why you have to mix and match? Because each of these approaches have pros and cons that you need to take into account respect to your application. So, for instance, lift and shift approaches are certainly suboptimal technical solutions, because you simply cannot grasp all of the benefits of the cloud if you have a monolith that was designed to run on-prem. And yeah, you probably simply cannot exploit all of the features and all of the scalability benefits and velocity benefits of the cloud. But you probably need a lower upfront investment, on this with this scenario, because you simply do the bare minimum to bring it to the cloud. So this enables scenarios where, if the organization is not mature enough, you can test your cloud readiness from both an organization and technical standpoint. And this is sometimes the first step you undergo in order for you to test your organization, whether your organization is ready, or to be able to create the first steps or the first building blocks for your organization to go to the cloud, not only on a technical fashion, but also from an organization point of view, which is basically revolutionizing your organization. For instance, how do I provision and how I purchase services on the cloud? Because many organizations are thinking about buying applications from vendors, buying services from cloud providers, even from a regulatory and a contract point of view, becomes a mess for many organizations. So yeah, when I speak about cloud organization, cloud readiness means not only technical stuff, but also organization in the widest sense possible. On the other hand, you have the opportunity to redesign and re-architect your application in a cloud-native fashion. This enables you to probably design your applications that can scale indefinitely, both in growing instances and both in reducing instances. You can really compress your costs when those instances are no longer needed. But you probably need to undergo lengthy and costly re-architecturing phases of your applications. And you have to have tooling and automation in places for those redesign to take place in a controlled and manageable fashion. So again, key takeaway from our real-world experience: there is no good or bad strategy related to how you can bring your applications to the cloud. You probably will end up mixing and matching those strategies depending on the application, on the business case of your application, on the business requirement you want to grasp from in going to the cloud, and in the maturity level of your organization, both in the cloud journey and in the stages of your application, because probably you don't want to move to the cloud an end-of-life application, but you will be, and so if you are really forced to move it to the cloud for whatever reason, you probably will end up lifting and shifting it because it's end of life. But if you are designing your application greenfield, so from scratch, you probably better design it to be cloud native. Okay. The enterprise cloud journey really becomes a matter of your organization following some approaches, some different approaches, and we see organizations evolve in 3 different stages. The first one is cloud exploration. You need to test your organization with really small experiments that should be able to generate value, but maybe for non-core business applications. So you can test your application, test your environment, test your organization, whether you are able to do that. And then you have the possibility to challenge whether that cloud journey or the cloud options from vendors you chose in advance are really sensible and makes sense for your business. So if this model is really sustainable. And then you have, so this is the exploring phase. Then you have the a more structured phase where you have swarms of applications that go to the cloud with a much larger scale, but with poor governance. So you tend to begin to have a fairly important mass of applications that go to the cloud, but have poor investments on governance and guidelines. Because you maybe grasp the initial values, maybe reach the initial values, and you want to grasp as many of those values and features as fast as possible. So in a sort of I follow the leader. I try to follow the leaders and with a few applications. And then, which is the third stages, which is the more compelling but also the more difficult one, is I set a platform, an organization platform, which enables me to go as fast as I can, but also in a structured way and in a controlled way, which means that each and every application should ideally go to the cloud, but should do this in your application portfolio, but should do this in a controlled fashion and in a governed approach. This approach is incremental, that is very obvious. And again, let me stress that you simply shouldn't take into account white or black approaches. You will have a gray approach where you have a hybrid model where many applications or many application components, so part of your applications, part of your data, will still reside on-prem. And this is a large pain for organizations and from an architecture standpoint.
You can see this as a maturity model for your organization, because if you go back to the previous slide, you have to pass all the levels. If you are an organization that begins exploring the cloud, we don't advise to develop a cloud platform or have your most critical applications brought to the cloud if you have not understood really what the cloud is. So you can see this kind of level as phases you have to pass in order to be ready as an organization.
If I may ask a question here, and how about the use of multi-cloud in the sense of not just one cloud, but multiple cloud in this hybrid model? Because sometimes maybe one cloud fits better that specific application requirement than one another. Of course, that's an additional level of complexity. But I was wondering how you approach the usage of multi-cloud.
We are laughing both because it's a very opinionated subject inside Imola Informatica. We are thinking about this, but multi-cloud is just a choice if that brings value to your organization. I mean, I have a new cloud that offers me as a SaaS a very innovative service. Then my platform or my organization has to be able to include this cloud because this brings value fast. Yeah. So multi-cloud, if it does not bring you value, then the advice is do not go with two providers because you have to talk to different suppliers. So it's an unnecessary burden or cost. Of course, the choice of multi-cloud or a single cloud and on-prem should be eased by your organization. Yeah. So I have to get ready to accommodate new needs as fast as possible. I don't know, Stefano.
Yeah, multi-cloud is an option, as I read in a book a few months ago, and we will see the book in the reference because it is really interesting. So quotes aside, I saw a lot of non-planned multi-cloud installments in the Cloud Explorer phase because many organizations have uncoordinated approaches. So they may end up testing that specific service from that cloud service provider because this is really compelling or it's the best in their in the market, but and other applications or services from other service providers just because they are cheaper than others. So in the cloud exploring phase, it's common to have this approach, or at least I saw this approach. But the real complexity here comes from the fact that, again, in a hybrid approach, which is not an option, which is mandatory, you should be able to manage your on-prem and cloud of choice in a controlled and uniform fashion before being able to control many clouds. Okay, and your data center should be your first cloud. So in a way, the first cloud service provider you onboard in a structured way really brings you to a multi-cloud way, because you should treat, and we will see this in the next few slides, you should treat your data center, your on-prem environment, as your first cloud. So in a way, you should be mature enough to be to piloting initiatives where you have multi-cloud. But they do have value, because many cloud providers compete. Most of the cloud providers nowadays compete on cost in the typical resources they offer you. So computational resources, infrastructure, networks, and so on and so forth. But the real interesting part nowadays, at least in my opinion, is on those value-added services. Let's say IA, pattern recognition, and so on and so forth. Many cloud service providers are challenging in very differentiating services that are really special purpose, but they are probably not that available on other cloud service providers. So they tend to diversify their offering in terms of specialized services. So this could be an option and a driving force that is way different from cost reduction or simply moving your applications to the cloud. You probably at a certain point will be forced to go in a multi-cloud fashion, because you need a service that only that specific cloud provider has, which unfortunately isn't your cloud provider of choice. Yeah. Okay. I see this as a pattern.
There are lots of misconceptions or misbehaviors. When you start going to the cloud, you think that multi-cloud is about choosing the provider that gives you the virtual machine that costs slightly less, and then you switch from your virtual machine from one provider to the other. But it's usually it's not worth. So multi-cloud is just for specialized services, because if you want to spend less money, then you have to work with following your workload. So if I have lots of clicks, then I get lots of resources, but as soon as possible, I have to destroy those resources inside my cloud provider or on premises in order to spend less money. The option of gaining from differences of prices of standardized services from cloud provider is usually not worth the burden, because just think about the fact that if you are moving from one cloud provider to the other, and you are leaving usually your data in the other cloud provider, you enter into latency problems or interruption of services of one cloud provider or the other, and you cannot understand what's happening. And if it's the problem with one cloud provider, the other, the link between them. So usually it's a mess, and it's not worth risking that.
Okay. Really nice question. Okay.
We can talk hours about it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a quick wrap up of the enterprise cloud journey. You should really focus your business reasons for going to the cloud upfront before entering a cloud journey initiative, because those really drive the way you craft your enterprise journey, your enterprise cloud journey, and the motivations and the expectations you can have from your as you evolve during your journey. Hybrid is not an option. Hybrid cloud is for large organizations and for organizations that have large application portfolios and data is not an option. You should take into account your on-prem environment will always be there. And you have to integrate with that. You should decide and pace your the adoption of cloud and the choice of what workloads moving to the cloud from an organizational and business point of view, And you should always take into account, again, hybrid scenarios, that you will always have your data and your core services on legacy systems and on-prem systems. So you should take into account not only on-prem, but also legacy systems, okay? Mainframe and so on and so forth still power most of the businesses that run billion of dollars or euros per year. So yeah, you have to take into account this. You have to take into account that you're not a greenfield. So how you design your applications, sometimes you can design them from scratch. Many times you will be required to lift and shift in initial stages your applications, and then you will be able to move them and translate them or re-architect them in a cloud native fashion. Okay, so again, it's a matter of how business relevant is your application and why you should go to the cloud with this application. Because if I want to really grasp the ability to scale your application, and I have a monolith, my application is a monolith that scales very poorly per se, probably going to the cloud will not save any money, okay? Because you will not be able to scale your application down when there will be no need for you to reserve those instances, okay? Okay, so the key takeaway is you have to really work hard to grasp the benefits of the cloud, and the benefits we saw in the first part of the presentation.
The point is, if you want to spend less money going into the cloud, then you have to work hard on your organization, on your architecture, on your applications, and work hard on identifying your needs. Yeah. Because if you do something just for the sake of technical reasons, then you end up spending more, spending more and risking more, because you insert technical complications. We have said that hybrid cloud is compulsory, so it's not an option. Multi-cloud is an option. So you have to decide to choose multi-cloud only if you need that for business reasons. Reasons. Depends.
Okay. The next part of the presentation will be about building cloud native platforms, which are guardrails for your organization to place a safety net for you to go as fast as possible, but in a controlled and secure way. So I'll leave the word to Filippo.
The point is, go back one slide. Yeah. Okay. The point, why do I need the, oops, sorry. Okay, let's go back to this slide. Why do I need a platform? Remember that platform is the third level of maturity. So just imagine that you have already explored the cloud and you have a large organization that has to be as fast as possible in bringing your applications to operation. So what's the point? I've already explored the cloud. I've already seen how to build my application for different clouds. I have already brought my big application, at least one big application, to the cloud manually. And then I have to start optimizing things in my enterprise. So I cannot take for granted that everybody in my enterprise, every developer is a cloud expert, because that would be an unnecessary constraint for every person. So you have to build inside your organization some accelerators. We have called them guardrails, because you have, just imagine you are on a road and you push fast on the on the pedal, and if something happens, then you have to have some guardrails as a safety net to let you drive fast and don't think about the exactly every aspect that we have to respect when going to the cloud. So I should just build my application and do not have to cope with latency problem, for instance, or where is my database? The platform has to take care of that and has to let me as a developer think about just developing things. Okay, so that's the point. So you will have some guidelines for bringing technical guidelines for bringing your applications to the cloud, but it's not enough by itself. We need to cover the entire life cycle to bring features into production as fast as possible. So I developed some code and I have to ease even the testing of this code into the cloud. So the platform has to ease my work as a developer, even in not thinking about building a development environment. So it takes care of everything that has to be built in order to bring things from development, design, development, and pre-production, bringing them to production. Okay. When you build applications for the cloud, you have to think cloud native. So we have discovered the option of lift and shift. We are a very mature organization. So all our applications we are bringing to the cloud because we have to maximize speed, have to be cloud native. There are lots of definition. One definition that's pretty good from a quality standpoint is the one from CNCF, that's the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It says that you have to build a scalable application that leverage containers, service meshes, microservices, immutable infrastructure, and lots of technical constraints. We have a set of techniques that enable loosely coupled system because you have to run things on the cloud and on-prem in hybrid scenarios. So the system cannot be tightly coupled. Applications that are resilient, just imagine that your part of the public cloud is going with a latency problem. A native application should start using just one side of the cloud, your private or the public part. So by following this kind of guidelines, you end up with things that are pretty good, resilient, manageable, and observable in the cloud. But it's a real mess to follow, and to be able to follow all of these guidelines, if every developer should learn them. Okay. You have lots of different other guidelines. 12-factor is another one, and Frost is another one. Your platform should be able, when you write down your algorithm, to hide the complexity of following this rule as much as possible. Okay. Depending on the quality of your platform, these things are hidden or well implemented or not. Okay. We were dealing about just about the technical, non-functional points you have to respect for your applications to be cloud native. A cloud native platform is something that eases even development activities, life cycle activities, by enforcing architectural guardrails, offering the best possible developer experience, supporting hybrid model, and being able to bring the cloud to on-prem and not vice versa. Because the point is, when you start going to the cloud as an explorer, you imagine that the cloud is just another data center. That's a big mistake, because you end up with 2 data centers and you end up with double the effort of managing things. So the point is that your data center has to evolve and become something that is a private cloud. So it's self-service, fully managed automatically, and it's not an easy thing. If you forget to implement this part of the scenario, then you end up with something that it does not accelerate you. It's just double the mess to operate things. So you end up you're going at least 2 times slower. Okay. So your platform should force you to implement cloud on premises, and at the same time hide all the details to the developers. Okay. So it's a matter of establishing a common language between private cloud and hybrid cloud. So you have to implement in your platform not only the way to hide details about cloud to your developer, but even a layer of management that hides all the technical decisions you have to put in place if something is not going well. For instance, the management plane takes care of latency problems, and when it identifies latency problems, it decides what to do with your application, moving your workload entirely to your public cloud, or in case of multi-cloud, choosing the best option for not choosing the cloud provider that is having problems. Okay, so it's a matter of monitoring and taking decision. The point is that when you build a platform, it's very important to remember to bring the cloud to on-prem and not vice versa, because this is a very important key point. We have seen lots of our customers that are trying to bring their on-prem to the cloud. It doesn't work. So that's why we believe that lift and shift is something that does not work on the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you end up with having problems coming from the fact that you are putting your application with lift and shift approach on a different environment you don't control. So it's worse than having things on-prem. Yeah. So on the long term, that's not the best option. Just to answer maybe to other questions even. Okay. What is a platform? So it's a cloud-inspired IT operating model. When you set up a platform, you say, the operating model of my company is a way to optimize speed and end-to-end value delivery for my company by leveraging the characteristic of the cloud. So if the characteristic of the cloud of choice is about peaks of, like in your example, so your platform has to optimize this scenario, but from a end-to-end standpoint. Okay. So the mistake you don't have to make when you build your platform is not to transport your existing operating model, because it's very it's just luck if your operating model is fits with the cloud operating model. So don't try to transport your operating model to the cloud. Okay. When you build a cloud native platform, you have to engineer it from different standpoints. You have to think about the cloud capability map, the maturity model, your application DNA, and you have to build a scorecard of your platform. This means that you have to identify the map of capabilities you need from the cloud, and you have to identify your maturity model in adopting them. So your platform should evolve by taking into account all these 5 aspects, depending on, for instance, the maturity model of your organization, the set of cloud capability you have changing over time. For instance, you were asking about multi-cloud. If a new capability emerges from a cloud provider, I have to put that in my cloud capability map, think about the value that capability is bringing to my company, and then put into my platform that capability if that brings value for my organization. Okay, so that's exactly the point. Of course, you will have lots of applications in your organization already running, usually legacy, and you have to think about application DNA, that is the technology that is behind my applications. If I have a legacy application, I have to ask myself, is it worth going to the platform or just keeping it legacy and with a lift and shift approach? Your platform should take into account even the kind of application you're going to bring, because sometimes if I need to bring a legacy application, maybe the best option is to put into my platform the characteristics that are needed by the developers of that application in order to be as fast as possible in going to the cloud, in operation to the cloud, but by not changing their development environment. So it's a matter of balancing all of these kinds of things. And you need a scorecard in order to be able to measure your overall performance in doing this. I mean, if I have a new kind of application I'm bringing to the cloud, my platform should measure the sets of defects I have when I bring things to testing, pre-production, and operations in order to be able to measure if the platform has to be changed in order to ease things from a developer point of view. Okay. So, if you reach the highest level of maturity, you end up with the need of setting up a platform that gives you guardrails, enables the design and delivery of cloud-native application in as easy as possible from your developer standpoint. And you need to evolve over time to cope with the business and technical requirements depending on the needs of your organization, while at the same time uniforming the operating model between on-premises and public cloud. Those are the key points. There's another big issue in going to the cloud. That's the cloud turns your organization sideways. Usually you think that your organization, as it is today, is going to the cloud. The point is that if you want to go to the cloud in an efficient way by not spending more money, you have to turn your organization sideways. So you have to rethink about your organization. Just think about the fact that you need a platform. You will have a platform team that is going to work on the platform in order to evolve it over time, and the developers do not have to think about the platform. They just have to use that and give feedback. So there are some interesting information coming from organizational communities. That is team topologies. Is a very interesting way to organize your company, your enterprise. We will talk about this. And so the cloud is going to turn your organization sideways. You have to give to every developer team of your application end-to-end control. So you have to let them work on just bringing function points, feature into production. They don't care whether they are on-prem or on Cloud X or Cloud Z, okay? But you have to give them end-to-end control. So you have to optimize the end-to-end value delivery. Going to production is the only value. So you have to change your organization accordingly to this only rule. What does team topology say? It says you have some stream-aligned team that are the development teams, and they have just to bring things, function points into production. You have to have a platform team that builds the guardrail and takes care of the fact that the guardrails are working okay. So if I have an accident, then I have to rethink about the shape of the guardrail. You have other teams that are enabling your stream align team just in case they stop and they cannot deliver stream. I have a problem. I cannot deliver this feature, so I have a team that has to run on and go to the stream team and help them. And I have other teams that are called complicated subsystem teams. They are the teams that are dedicated to specific kinds of problem for your application. Think about teams working on AI models. Okay. Where do this team fit? Complicated subsystem team, the square on the left, they just usually model things to bring them, model new models of AI, and then the stream team brings it into production. The enabling team helps a stream-aligned team to overcome obstacles doing day by day in order not to disturb too much platform team that have to continuously watch what's happening on the cloud, what's happening during accidents, post-mortem, and delivering the platform that is something that is very complicated. So in the platform team, you have a grouping of other team types that provide you the platform, because when you build a platform team, you need to have people coming from the other experiences, because you have to put on other people's feet, other people's shoes, in order to build a platform that eases them in bringing value to operations. Okay, so going into what a platform team has to do, they have to onboard stream-aligned teams. When I decide that an application is going to move to the cloud, not in a lift and shift approach, then the platform team has to help them enter the platform, because it's the way they enter the cloud. They have, of course, by dealing with the newly onboarded team, they have to ease technical architectural frictions. It means I have a legacy application that's coming to the cloud. When I onboard them, I ask them, is there a feature I do not support as a platform? So maybe I start designing and developing together with the newly onboarded team new features for my platform. And then constantly I have to evolve the platform to suit organization, architecture, and technological needs. For instance, a new interesting SaaS for my organization is coming. The landscape changes, and I decide to put the new feature in the platform or not. Okay, just to give you an example, serverless and event-driven architecture are two interesting options offered and really commercially pushed by lots of cloud providers. This is a decision. Do I have to put serverless and event-driven architecture into my platform? The answer is only if I think that this brings value to my organization. Okay. Otherwise, I decide just to embrace just a new technology without messing with the platform. I mean, I'm less mature. I take the explorer approach. Okay. Again, this is a choice that has to be carefully evaluated. Value and cost. Okay. So, wrapping up, a cloud journey requires you to adapt organizations and teams. Team topologies is a suitable model to reorient an organization towards a flow of change values that is the only value you have to think about when you're going to the cloud. Of course, if you're going really to the cloud and not with a lift and shift approach. And platform teams become crucial, in our opinion, in supporting the evolution of your cloud native platform, because the teams that are in the streams do not have to be forced to learn everything about cloud, because they have to be aligned about the value that the application is bringing to my enterprise. That's all.
Okay, that's all, folks. Thanks a lot, first of all, to Filippo and to Stefano. Now we have some room for questions from your side. I had scrolled here and there, but haven't seen questions so far. So now it's time to open the chat and drop your questions, your comments, so I can bring them to our speakers. Meanwhile, I will start breaking the ice with the first one. So possibly without naming the company, could you make us an example of this journey that most probably have already done with some of your customers?
Okay, I'm going back to the maturity model. We have lots of...
just to give a rough idea of how much you spent in the Cloud Explorer, the Patterning Swarm, or to reach the Platinum Cloud Platform phase, let's say.
I'm thinking about some percentage of customers fitting in the three categories. We have one very large customer and very important in the insurance field that asked Imola Informatica to start with a Platinum Cloud Platform, and it's more or less it was more or less 3 or 4 years ago. In 3 or 4 years, I've seen that a couple of other big customers are asking us something about platforms. So roughly 30% of our customers are thinking about 30% of our revenues. So I'm weighting the customer based on their income and their importance. 30% are thinking about the platform. 10%, 1 out of 3, has already one platform in place since for 3 or 4 years, and is thinking about evolving the platform in order to support cloud and multi-cloud, because they use their platform for 3 years on-prem. So they use the platform as a way to have elastic things, elasticity, self-service on-prem without adopting almost anything on-prem except just a Kubernetes instance. So that's interesting. They already are mature and ready for real production. They already implemented the critical applications, and they are very very happy with the outcome, and they're thinking about going into the cloud completely in a hidden fashion by a platform. Of course, they are starting exploring the cloud. That's the 10%, the important company, is as Cloud Explorers initiatives, and is starting with a Patterning Swarm just to learn the cloud provider, the technical issues or the technical thing about the cloud provider they've chosen, because you have to start learning about where you are going, what is the operating model of the cloud provider you're using, because you have differences in operating model, differences in ways of getting your logs, and they are at different maturity on that standpoint. The other 70% of customers usually have isolated Cloud Explorer initiatives. No patrolling swarms. You go to patrolling swarms when you decide to go to the cloud. You say, okay, I've seen that the cloud is interesting. I've identified my business value. I start to move with an important application. So I would say that pattern swarms is not adopted because it's hidden by the Platinum platform.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's difficult to it's an incremental process. So it's difficult even to see from the outside if a customer is pushing on that, because when you start, then the customer is working alone. So you don't measure the set of initiatives that they are implementing.
I also see companies being probably roughly in the Platinum Cloud Platform stage from a technical standpoint, but lagging fairly behind from an organizational standpoint. Many of them, or at least some of them, are struggling in adapting their organization model to really support a platform, not only from a technical standpoint, but also from an organization one. And this is something that is understandable because they have regulations in place. They have dozens of years in place of that kind of organizations for that kind of business that is not only regulated by the law, but also is done in that way. Have been done in that way for the last 10 to 20 years. Okay. And you have to recognize that if you want to really bring value as fast as possible, the stream values, the stream teams we saw before really cross your organization. Whereas most of the times your organization is structured in a really hierarchical fashion. So I saw really many times teams that try to realize their flow of change, but each and every stage has different offices or different stakeholders in the organization that need to be taken into account, and those are organizational friction points. You shouldn't be you shouldn't be interested in talking to, but you are forced to. So in a way, the platform team should also have the organizational responsibility to decide whether you can do or can't do something from a technical or architectural standpoint, no matter the conceptions or the misconceptions of others or other parts of your organization that shouldn't take a word in the architectural decision, but they are involved in the process of building value for the organization. So yeah, it's really complicated matter trying to devise the responsibilities of who deals with decisions that should be loose enough for you to again go as fast as possible, but also strict enough for you not to take really wrong decisions that hinder the whole process of getting to the cloud. You shouldn't. I will go into an example that is really sensible for me. The cloud platform should be able to provide you observability, monitoring, and so on and so forth, so that your stream-aligned team should be able to see and understand what your application is doing, and if it is misbehaving, you can intercept this in a matter of in a fraction of time. But what's the point of having monitoring and observability if your regulatory instances that you have in place force your team not to see a part of your logs or of the logs your application relies upon, because those logs are not exactly from your application, but from an application you're talking to. Okay, so compartmentalization of the information sometimes is something that is necessary in large organizations, but you have to take into account that if you restrict visibility, for instance, in logs and monitoring and so on, you really cannot support in really speeding up the flow of change. Okay, and this is something that is many organizations are struggling for good reasons, but they're still struggling, and it's a hurdle that should be removed anyway.
Okay, great. Let me also ask another point about the platforms or the providers, the technologies. So we've spoken a lot about the hybrid cloud model. So I was wondering, again, in your experience with your customers, which is the technology you're adopting most in the private cloud part, or if you can give us rough percentages as you did before, about the technologies you are using in the private cloud trunk, and instead what are the ones that you're using in the public cloud trunk? Of course, you are quite agnostic in terms of technology, so that's why I'm asking this.
90% Kubernetes, but we think this is not. This is a maturity problem. I mean that there's a disclaimer. There's a disclaimer in the hidden in the slides. Going into the cloud is not going to adopt containers and not going to adopt Kubernetes, because that's a part of the story. Just think about serverless. Kubernetes does not support serverless. You have to integrate other components. You have to integrate other technologies, and then you have to integrate even proprietary solutions coming from cloud providers, because otherwise you end up with a lift and shift of Kubernetes everywhere. So that's a maturity problem, because you have to end up to think about the fact that maybe inside your on-prem, the best option for serverless is technology, and if you use, for instance, AWS, the best option is not to bring a virtual machine with your serverless to AWS, but using their software as a service, the serverless implementation. Of course, you will have to clean and ease things from an application development point of view. Of course, if all my applications are developed using Node.js, I have to check that serverless from AWS supports Node.js, and the same level of support has to be offered by my on-prem implementation. Or my platform should take care of the differences in implementation.
So 90%, let's say, roughly speaking, 90% of the on-prem deployment are based on Kubernetes, deployed itself on the physical layer, or on a virtualized environment.
Usually on a virtualized environment, and usually 90% tends to lift and shift Kubernetes on the cloud.
The virtualized environment instead, it is based on what?
Sometimes even on bare metal. Of course, if you take a look at the bare metal offerings of every cloud provider, it costs you more than virtualized environment. So it's again a matter of balance. We have seen lots of attempts at stretching Kubernetes between on-prem and cloud, and we are saying, no, don't do that, unless they do that usually, and then they realize it does not work.
And again, many of our customers adopt a Kubernetes flavor also on cloud. But what we stressed in the presentation, and again I want to stress it right now, is that most of those initiatives are poorly coordinated from a organization standpoint. So basically you end up having a set of pipelines or DevOps pipelines that deploy onto your on-premises account or on your premises environment and on your cloud, but not in a uniform and managed way. So yeah, it's kind of exploratory approach at the moment. And you usually see that this is a exploratory approach, not only in the development part, but in the again in the observability and in the runtime part, because sometimes you end up having fairly integrated deployment pipelines from a DevOps standpoint. So you tend to have pipelines that maybe can deploy to one target on-prem, to another on cloud, but you usually fall short when you have to monitor them, because probably you have to monitor instances that are really spread and scattered. So you have monitoring instances on-prem which do not talk to monitoring instances on cloud, and this is a mess, because if you want to really understand how your applications are behaving in a hybrid world, you shouldn't look into different places to understand what your application is doing. Okay, and this is one of the first signs of, for me at least, of not having an integrated cloud-native platform. If you need to observe logs of your application in two different places, then you probably have you're not having a really cloud-native platform for that guides your development, and this is way too common.
You don't have a platform.
Anyway,
there are some hidden things. You have to establish a common language. I mean, if my application is divided into on-prem and public, from an application developer and the application operations point of view, it should not be divided at all. Otherwise, it does not work. It does not operate. It's not sustainable.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can conclude our today's conversation. It was really great pleasure and pleasant conversation. I hope you enjoyed, and let me wrap up reminding you two things. First of all, we are keen on receiving your feedbacks on the whole SII 4.0 initiative. And so please do go to the survey that we sent you, and please do fill in with a lot of comments and useful feedbacks for us. And the second is that I remind you the conclusion event that we will have on the 30th of September, where we will have a roundtable with some view, the government representative from the region, and some companies as well, representatives from the companies, both representing, let's say, some of your teachers from companies, as well as some HRs from the companies that were involved in our initiative with their worker students. So thank you a lot again, and I hope to see you all here in the same location, the same physical location, on the 30th of September. Have a good evening, have a good weekend, and thanks a lot again to Filippo and to Stefano for their talk, and to Imola Informatica.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. Our pleasure.